So we're changing an Infinix X650 screen today, and things you have to take note of first is you have to first of all remove the SIM seater, right? Then you pry from that SIM port. It's easier, just on top of it. Although this one is a lot easy now because it has been changed before, so that's why it's coming off this easily. So you have to pry that side, pushing this the fingerprint sensor so that you don't cut the flex, because it's very important. If you force it open, you rip out the flex, and that'll be a very big problem between you and the owner. So you have to make sure you take care of that devices whenever it's with you. Try your best to keep it in a neater, in a better condition, so that it will be difficult to identify that it's been removed. So you have to, I call it an act. You need to, as an artist, you need to make sure you beautify your products. So you remove all the screws. There are a lot of screws on this device for no just reasons, bro. It has so many screws in it, and they're not necessary, but well, that's how Transsion designed their products. Fun facts, Transsion owns Infinix, Techno, Itel, and Oraimo. It's all their products, and I don't know. Their designs are very funny. The screen connects both the down panel and the main board, right? So everything on the down panel, this mouthpiece, what's it called, the charging port, the network antenna, the screen flex connects it, right? Although there's a network cable on the flex you'll see in a few minutes. So yeah, you remove all the screws and be very careful, about how you go about uncoupling this phone. Although there's just not much delicate components under the board, but as long as you're dealing with people's properties, you just have to be extra careful, because one mistake and you've chipped one IC, one capacitor, one resistor, and that's a whole other problems on its own. So you need to, walk carefully and open it up. So now we've accessed the main board, and if you observed earlier, you'll see that I use the magnet on my screwdriver. It's easier to use magnet and so have all your screws in one place, so that when you're done, you can couple it up like that. So first thing first, you unclip your battery, and then using a screen. This is from a screen guard. It's not like you need to go and buy it. It's always around in the shop. Once you've changed any phone screen guard, just find a stronger one. Not so thick, flexible enough, that I can use, and then pry the battery. I like to start from the screen flex because it's the one I'm going to change. So I start from the top of it and pry underneath, right? Watching the edges. Once it has gone under, every other thing is easier. But this battery has been changed before, so it's a lot easier to just pull out. And you will see that, well, maybe other product I'll take care of in the future, maybe they'll be all straight from the box. So it will be easier to show you in details how you can pry the battery out. So you see, it has been changed before. That's why the markers are there to show you that it's been replaced before. So you pull out the flex, unclip the down flex, and you're almost out with the screen. So if it's a phone that has not been changed before, it'll be difficult to open up the screen panel, but this one has been changed before. So if it has not been changed before, we use hot air, our blowing station, to heat it up, then open it up. I will show it in another video. So now this one has been fixed before, so stuff like this are just easier to replace. So whoever did this job before, they tried to have a lot of balance in it, and they didn't cover the down IC, which it worked to that very in that very instance, but because of security and safety, I like to cover it up with black tape. You see that by the end of this video. Before the end of the video, you see how I do it. So now you clean up the edges of the frame, removing all the dust and residues from the previous installation. You remove everything, make sure it's clean. This is a very, very interesting thing, because any mistake and there's a bit of glass in there, and you apply a new screen, it will just break it. So even if it's a small sand, it will just cause damages, and you have to go and buy another screen. And those things are not cheap, and nobody will accept a return if you come out and say it has broken. You have to buy another screen, so you have to be very sure that you take your time, remove all particles, tiny dust, residues from the previous installation, so that even if, for the purpose of just the fact that the edges of the screen will have to sit and fit in perfectly, because the closer you are to the original design, the more impressive the job turns out. The final result is such a way that when someone looks at the edges, there's no light coming up, there's no residue, there's no up, it doesn't bend one corner or any of those things. So you have to be sure to remove old dirt and debris to get everything working smoothly. Now the masking tape part of it. So this whole thing is just insulates the frame. Now I don't know how, or can't explain exactly why or how it happens, but when you fail to do this, most screens tend to fail after a short period of time, sometimes 2 days, sometimes that same day. They'll start shaking, they'll go blank and stuff. So the best thing is just to mask the frame. Either you mask this part, or you mask the screen part, or you mask both, but just don't waste it by masking both. You either choose the frame or the screen part, right? So my students have already placed a marks on the down side of the screen already, so we can proceed, despite the fact that I've placed one on the other part. But it's still not a problem, and it won't affect anything. In fact, the more the merrier. But for the sake of cost, we reduce how much we spend on it. But remember, these are all easier ways and cheaper means of achieving the perfect result at the end of the day, using what we have around us. What I use is masking tape, insulator tape. Just buy one, insulation tape from any electrical shop, and use it to mask either the frame part or the screen part. So now we're going to get into the point of testing the screen to see that everything is working well before we start final application. So I prefer to clip my the screen clip first. So once the screen has been clipped, the next thing is to put the battery and power up the device, which is the stage right now. Clip the battery. You don't need to clip the down panel yet, because once the screen is functioning, once the flex connecting the screen is functioning, it's always easier. You can assume that the entire process, that the screen will power up. So you need to power the screen and test the battery. Remember, phones like this, the screw is always at the back cover. Getting them on without screwing the back cover is a bit tricky. So most times you need to push in on the panel to power it up. But there are other ways you could do that. So you could just clip the battery, then push in from the side, then power up for it to start up. So this is a way to apply the pressure there and make sure that the phone is has powered up. So this one was a bit tricky. It refused to power up initially, so I had to clip the down panel, and connect it to a power source to ascertain that the battery is well charged, so that I will know why it's not coming up immediately. So, which is what I did here. I mounted the down panel and clipped the flex, used a charger, to confirm that there's power in the battery, So there you've seen it. It's showing the battery icon, and it has 97%, right? So I just go ahead and power it up. Power now. So wait for it to boot up and attest basic functions. You need to check. Usually I just use the password, which is not very advisable because of the limited amount of trials you can have on passwords. My next option is to use the emergency call feature of the lock screen. So when using that, it's easier. Just dial some numbers and see how it goes. Yeah, so you just dial some of the numbers. Once it's not dancing around, once everything is calibrating as normal, functioning as it should, then you could be pretty sure that everything will work perfectly. You don't take passwords for privacy purposes. You don't ask customers for the password of their devices. Over time, it has been proven to be wise to just test with the basic functions you have on the screen. Most screens are tested before being shipped out. So whatever you're doing now is just to reconfirm, so that during movement from the producers from factories to the wholesalers and down to you, that there's no mix-up or any effect anywhere. We are done testing, and we are now at the final stage where you apply adhesive to the LCD. So you apply gums at the rims, taking note not to block the proximity sensors, light sensors that are on top of the screen. So you apply on the rims straight, just slowly move all the edges round, just lightly, so you don't put too much so it doesn't get in between the screen. And you'll be very watchful for the spots where those sensor markers are, not to cover them to avoid having the phone brightness not responding to light and stuff. So what I usually do to make sure that part is also well glued, I apply gums at the edges of the screen towards the lines between the sensor, the front camera, So you also apply on the edges of the frame of the phone. You apply just around it too, right? Just at the edge, not too much, so it will not be messy at the end. Just straight lines. Like I said, it's an act, so you have to be very gentle when applying. And those edges where it has been chipped off, you have to apply more, so it holds. You block the rounds of the sensor to avoid light from getting to it when it's not necessary. You also apply gums at those points. I felt a sand there, that's why I have to remove it. So you apply this direction too, and around the camera edges, so it will sit properly, so sands or debris doesn't get in from those points, right? So once that is done, the next thing is just to slide the flex in place, noticing the downsides that it's you have to be careful so it gets in too. Then I prefer to bend and slide in. Yeah, I don't know what that's inspired in your head, but just slide it in gently, right? Carefully add a bit pressure, then you can get to the crunchy clipping part of the flex. But there's a method to clipping flex that at any point in time you make sure that everything is right. So put the network cable, then clip the down part. I like to go from one edge first. Once that is in, the others can sit in comfortably and easily too. Be very mindful of this network flex, because if you fail to do this now, when you're closing the back cover, it will not become a problem. So that's why a stitching time will save you 9 other stitches. So apply it there gently. I like to go from one edge to clip one side, and once that side is in, the other ones are there too. You don't apply too much pressure from the front. So when I fold my flex, right, I use a screw to hold it up to allow for battery to slide in easily, and then rest it on the battery. That is how I do it. So once everything is set, flex has been well lifted, apply the battery, clip it down, apply a bit of pressure on the flex to get the battery rims all flattened out, right, so it doesn't pull up eventually. The next thing is to mount everything back and put the screws, so like I said, when you've used a magnet on your screwdriver, it's easier to just pick the screws one by one and put them in place. It makes the job faster, right? So this magnet, you can get it from any bad or spoiled speakers. Just pull out the magnet, throw away every other thing, then it's just a thing about putting everything back in place. Put the screws exactly how they were originally positioned, and mount your fingerprint sensor, put the guard, the sensor guard, that's the iron part, that's with the guard, apply the screws. Just like I said, it's an act. You have to make it as neat as possible, so the customer will actually be very happy with you and the final result. There'll be no physical damages to it. It will be as clean as it was, but neater than it was when it was given to you, and closer to the factory standard where it was when it was bought. So just do as much as possible to ensure that all your services and your jobs are as neat as possible. Whatever other issues can correct for them, you correct it. Like in this very case, you can notice the volume keys are out, so I will not just couple the phones without taking note of those points. So what I do with the volume keys is that I use a masking tape, right? Just cut out a bit, almost the full length of the volume key and the power key. Place the keys in their right positions and apply the tape so that the edges, fit the rims of the device. Any extra, I could burn it out with soldering iron or use a razor blade to cut it and make it, give it a clean cut, so that these things, they don't fall out at random. Then you can now mount the cover, couple the phone and power it up. So I use rubber bands to hold the screen in place, not too tight, just 3 loops. So just power up the device, and then I apply another rubber band down, and then one more in the middle, just to give it a bit of hold, not too much. Remember, just 3 loops each of them, so that the whole thing will just sit there for 30 minutes to 1 hour. After which, once the owner of the phone is ready, they can take their phone and leave. Just do one more final confirmation of all points, But if the person is in a hurry, you can give them the device and advise them to remove the rubber band, after 1 hour. That is all.